Welcome, everybody,
Hello.
a very special Movie Boners episode. Let's see. New, interesting, important things we need to talk about. A handful of things. So, I mentioned last time we were running a very special promotion for charity in the merch store.
Yeah.
And one thing I haven't done is show you how cool our new merch is. We got some new designs to go along with this. So we're planning to give all of the proceeds for the month of June from our merch store to charity. So anything that would be normally profit for us is going to charity instead. We're going to support kids without dads. So there's are we going to do the Dudes for Dads one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're doing this. There's this charity called Dudes for Dads who seem like very cool dudes, and decided to go with that. I may or may not take it out. We'll see. So check them out if you're interested. All of our proceeds will go to them. They will do good and help kids and things like that. But we added these new designs, which we haven't had before. We have this new above average dad logo, which is like our average Joe logo, but for dads, which we thought was fitting, considering this episode comes out on Father's Day, of all things.
Right.
And then one thing that we haven't had is this. The only way you've been able to get this really cool broadcast pirate shirt, VHS pirate shirt that we've designed, logo that we've had for a little while, has been if you join the fan club. So it's the first time it's been generally available, and it's in an all new back and front design. For those of you who remember recording things off of television onto VHS,
The good old days.
Exactly. So that's a fun thing that everybody can now enjoy for a limited time. As soon as June is over, it will go away. But at least for the time being, you go and grab yourself some merch. And nothing you need to do. You don't need to put in any codes. Just anything you want in the store, whether you want those charity-specific things or any of our normal things, feel free to pick it up. I should mention, I got this as a sample to make sure it would look good. It does indeed look good.
Look at you with the camo.
We have this new, it's felt daddish to me, a new camo hat as well, which is very cool.
To me.
It did. I thought so. So yeah, check that out. Anything you want in the merch store, including if you want to sign up for the fan club. And your June month of the fan club will also go to charity. So I would recommend that if you want to get some in on some bonus episodes, spin on some bonus content, get into the clubhouse. There's a bunch of perks. So sign up for that.
So go do it.
And then what else have we been doing?
Well, I'm kind of shocked you're being so coy about checking out your draft in particular, because I know that you had a pretty decent uptick.
Say that.
I think we could say
that. Yeah, that's true. I think it's been all right, I would say. But thank you for bringing that up.
I mean, I figured you were going to anyway, so I needed to just soften the blow.
Yeah, might as well get it out there, let people know. There was a little explosion, you could say, of box office primarily. We had, so in the last several weeks, specifically most recently, Friendship, Mission Impossible, Final Reckoning, and Lilo and Stitch came out. Going pretty gangbusters.
A little bit.
I think Lilo and Stitch set records. Mission Impossible had the biggest opening of the entire franchise history, so that was huge. I think Lilo and Stitch had a bigger opening than Barbie did, and that went over $1 billion. So, but I've also seen a lot of people. It's gotten a lot of people that like it. It seems like, but also a lot of sounds like legitimate criticisms, where particularly around the ending, people do not like that the sister, spoiler alert, the sister gives up Lilo and decides to go to college, and so she goes into the foster care system basically. And so people are like, I thought Ohana meant family. I thought that that you stayed together all the time. And it sounds like I haven't seen the movie, but it sounds like it's for a dumb reason, where she's like, I want to go to college and do marine biology in California. I'm pretty sure there's marine biology programs in Hawaii. It's probably their main thing.
I assume it's a big thing, at least.
Yeah, they have universities in Hawaii. I don't know. I don't understand. But anyway, so that might inhibit its actual growth if that continues to be a criticism. But Final Reckoning is out there. Friendship is apparently good in the IMDb rating. Knew the box office wouldn't be good, though.
Right.
And then, yeah.
But I think it only had like a super limited release anyways, so.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't international. It was only domestic.
Yeah.
But I think even domestic probably only had a handful of theaters. And then Accountant 2 seems like it was pretty good, too. So, yeah. So, looking pretty good. Currently in the lead. The IMDb rating is pretty close as well. So,
yeah.
Possibility that could come back. I would say we both have picked very good movies to start. We haven't had any gross ones.
This was probably our strongest, or at least most consistent start.
Yeah. Yeah, to be both up in the sevens, mid sevens.
Yeah.
That's very, very good so far. But a lot of year left to go.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Let's see. Anything? I guess new stuff. What new things have you seen lately?
There's a handful of new things, and a couple of which I gave up on.
I had some good and bad, too.
Yeah. So, I decided after the last episode, I was like, okay, maybe I was jumping the gun on being critical of the show You.
Yeah.
So it's like, maybe it gets better. Maybe I'll understand the hype after like more than 3 episodes.
Sure.
So I watched a little more. I don't get the hype. If you're a fan of it, can you explain what makes it good? Because it's super boring and it's very uninteresting. Finished season 1, and it's just I'm just not.
That's a good that's a good time to stay with something, I would think.
Yeah, so I feel like I've given it a fair shot, and it's just the most uninteresting show I've watched for a while. At least I thought so, until I thought, oh look, there's another show that Netflix just put out. Awesome cast. This will be hilarious. This will be hyper entertaining. I'm really excited to watch this because I'm a big fan of Steve Carell. It's awesome to see Tina Fey doing things again. So I checked out the 4 seasons, the new series that's on Netflix.
I haven't even heard of this.
Yeah. For such a big comedic cast, I forget everyone that's in it, but it's a big cast. Your guy, Will Forte's in it as well.
I knew when you said your guy, that's who it was, but I couldn't think of his name.
Yeah. For such a strong comedic cast, I don't know. I haven't found it funny.
Is it like more of a drama?
No, it's supposed to be like... Or is it trying
to be a comedy?
It's supposed to be comedic, yeah. With a little bit of drama like spliced in, but it's all satirical, but it's like... I don't know. It's just not for me, so I gave up on that one too.
Fair enough.
And then in movies, which was way better than those shows, I did see Thunderbolts.
Okay.
Or AKA the New Avengers.
Yeah, the movie formerly known as Thunderbolts.
Yeah. And you know what? It was pretty entertaining. It was one of the better Marvel movies to come out in a long time. One of the stronger tries.
Yeah.
I guess you could say. But very entertaining. Had some cool action. They actually put in some, like, a real story. Which
what a concept.
I know. Which I appreciated. But it definitely did feel good to watch a Marvel movie that seemed to be trying to get back kind of into a rhythm. And so that was nice. It was worth the hype. I enjoyed it very much. So that was cool. I did go and see Mission Impossible Final Reckoning because obviously I have to finish off my favorite franchise. And it did not disappoint. The stunts are ridiculous. You see a blip of it in the trailer, but the whole plane sequence was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen, and highly suggest if you haven't watched it on the big screen, do so for that. And there's a whole diving scene that's also bonkers. They need to be on the big screen because it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous what Tom Cruise has done.
That's fantastic.
But, yeah, very cool movie. Pretty strong ending. I really liked it. I really, really liked it. I think the only thing I would have changed on it was maybe made it a little longer, which I know, crazy because it's already 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I could have kept going for a little while longer.
Does it feel rushed?
A couple sequences felt rushed.
It's weird to ask if Mission Impossible feels rushed, where they're constantly like hurrying
moving.
to not have the world end, but
they do something because obviously there's a lot of callbacks to the previous 7 films. There's a very specific, it's not even a callback. It actually becomes kind of a big centralized part of the final one that made me very, very, very happy, because it's something that I've always been like, do it. And then they did it. And it was so
Does
satisfying.
it have to do with the first movie?
No.
Oh. So somebody, I think it was Movie Archer on Instagram, said that it may be important to see the first movie or have it refresh in your mind when you face this one.
I mean, honestly, I had a guy at work ask me about it, and I was like, you really do kind of need to have seen the franchise to get why Ethan Hunt is in the position he's in this particular mission. But yeah, very awesome ending. Loved every moment of it. So good. I'm going to miss that franchise. But I guess 8 movies is enough. All right.
8 movies with no real bad ones.
Right. And then I watched the hilarious, it felt like a really good callback to slasher films, but did you hear of Heart Eyes?
I heard of it. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. Very entertaining, very funny. Reminded me a lot of My Bloody Valentine with a little bit better acting in it. It was fun. It was a good callback to slashers. And then I watched, my daughter actually introduced me to a movie. I watched a lot of stuff, man.
I did too.
My daughter introduced me to a movie that she's been talking about forever, and she finally was like, Dad, can you please watch it with me? I said, yeah. So she had me watch this movie called Missing. It's from like a year or 2 ago. It's about this 18-year-old girl whose mom and her mom's boyfriend go on this trip together, and then they vanish, and she's trying to figure out what happened to them. But the whole movie is shot from her screen. So like her laptop or her phone or security cameras. It's always in that.
Okay. There's that John Cho did a movie like that called Searching, and it's like the same sort of thing where he's
very
only
similar.
on
I didn't
FaceTime,
see that
only
one.
on text messages, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it was interesting. It wasn't as distracting as I expected it to be. The movie was, for a mystery thriller, it was fun. I enjoyed it. And watching it with my daughter and having her introduce me to that particular one was even more fun. So yeah. And then I did finally get around to, we had it nominated in our awards, and I was like, well, I should probably watch this considering I like slasher films, and this is like the new take on them. So I watched In a Violent Nature.
Okay.
This might be a hot take, but that was probably the most boring. Like, I was so like, the kill scenes were cool, but the movie itself, I was like, cool. This is the least violent nature movie I have seen.
That's all I was nominated for, was the effects, I think. Mostly for that one cliff scene.
On the cliff scene, yeah.
Which is one of the coolest and most
I give
brutal
it
kills
props
I've
for
ever
that
seen.
one. And the practical effects usage, awesome. But it's like 2 hours of the back of the dude's head walking through the woods, and it turns out that the point of view of the killer, not that exciting. Not that interesting. I was like, well, a couple kills were cool, but all right.
Yeah, I liked hearing like him overhearing the cliche teen party group like conversations and like all the things that you would normally, that would be the scene in any other horror movie, but he's just like kind of slightly overhearing it. It was funny, but like I get what, it's very slow for sure.
It means well, and I'm sure it's one that I think reading the script would probably be very exciting. I just think they could have focused a little bit more on, if it's a nod, like a full call onto the 80s slasher films. I mean, if you've watched Friday the 13th or, you know, any of them, especially those campy ones, like Sleepaway Camp or whatever, there's a lot of kills, and I felt like this one just really didn't worry about the body count, and that's a weird thing to complain about, but when you make a movie about body count, you should probably up the stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was very underwhelming for me, which might be why I thought Heart Eyes was so much fun, because it was the exact opposite of In a Violent Nature, where it had not that great of kills, but a lot of kills, and that was fun to watch. So, and I think that was it.
Cool. I have a handful of things too, because it's been a while since we recorded. So I mentioned last time I started Black Mirror season 7.
Oh, yeah.
Did end up finishing that. I would say it's definitely better than the last couple of seasons overall. I told you about the first episode with Chris O'Dowd and Rashida Jones, and how the point of it is a subscription service that just keeps getting worse and more expensive, and it was kind of just, but they never really tied into the fact that Netflix is that also. And so I wasn't sure if the funny parts were intentionally funny in the whole thing. There was another episode where it's all about the use of AI and how they want to refresh old movies by making them, like, putting more current modern actors in them, and it's like an old black and white Casablanca type movie, and they replaced the male lead with this black lesbian, and I was like, this has to be a joke. Like, this has to be like a reference to the thing that people are constantly complaining about. But they never do like any sort of tongue-in-cheek wink at the audience about it. So I was like, oh, kind of would have been funnier if you did. But overall, it was interesting. I think it was solid, more solid than it has been in the past. And then I finished Severance season 2. Okay. And Severance continues to be a pretty amazing show. I would definitely highly recommend it.
Yep.
I didn't tell you last time about season 1, like, what the show is really about. So it's kind of, it's a weird
before
mystery show. Okay.
It's one of those shows where I definitely want to watch it.
Okay.
But I've been actively trying to avoid seeing or knowing anything, because it strikes me as the kind of show that you will enjoy it far more knowing nothing about what you're getting yourself into. So, don't tell me anything.
Fair enough. I will say Ben Stiller's direction is fantastic, and visually it looks amazing constantly. But the mystery is also very interesting and good. If there is a mystery, I wouldn't want to tell you if there was. But since you've seen Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning, you know Tremel Tillman, the black guy. He's in it in Severance.
He's in Severance too.
And he might be my favorite character. He's incredible.
Okay.
He plays this really, like, just a diverse kind of a person that is a lot of different things at the same time. He's so interesting. I really, really am interested to see him in Final Reckoning. I keep wanting to call it Dead Reckoning Part 2. It's Final Reckoning.
Still stuck in 2020.
Apparently. Stuck in my ways. We watched Fear Street, Prom Queen. Did you watch
the new one?
Yeah, the new one. Did you watch the first Fear Street, like, trilogy? It's like 3 different years. That was good. Like, it was decent. It was interesting.
Those were great.
And it had a reason to exist, like, to have made that, and it had a lot of a point, basically. Prom Queen did not have a point at all. I didn't see any reason for that movie to exist. It didn't do anything that wasn't cliche or silly, and not like a good kind of silly. It just felt like Netflix felt like, we have this property, we have to use it, and we don't care what you do, just do something, anything, please. And that's what it felt like they made. I really did not care for it.
I've heard a lot of bad things about it, which is why I did not watch it this last week.
Yeah, for sure. I watched Another Simple Favor, the Anna Kendrick Blake Lively sequel. Yeah, which I think went straight to streaming on Amazon. And it's a fine straight to streaming movie. Anna Kendrick definitely carries it. She's amazing and hilarious. Blake Lively shows a lot more range and just kind of in the character that she plays. And so that's kind of interesting, pretty interesting. But it's medium, mundane, forgettable.
You know, I rewatched the first one because I remember being like, hey, the first one's pretty great. And when I rewatched it, I found myself being like, wow, this first one's not that great.
Fair enough.
So I've been hesitant to watch the sequel because I'm like, do I care? Enough?
Yeah. It was definitely like, I don't know what to watch. This should be easy to watch. Let's just put it on kind of thing.
Okay.
And it kind of was.
So
but there's also a really... there are better things that you could do.
Gosh.
There are better movies that you could put on. If you're desperate, it's fine. But there are a million other better movies.
That's the worst selling point ever.
There's a million other better, easy, fun movies to watch than this one. So I would not seek it out unless you're a big fan.
That was my favorite description I think you've ever done. If you're desperate, there are better things to watch.
Yeah. Yes. And then I watched Juror number 2, finally.
Oh,
you had recommended it ages ago. Clint Eastwood makes a damn good movie, I must say. And the cast is insane. All I really knew was Nicholas Hoult was in it. But there's a ton of people in this movie. And I really liked the I don't know his name, but the black guy from Reno 911, who's like, you remember Reno 911 from?
Yeah. Yes.
He's like the main.
Yeah.
The main, I guess, the only black guy on the jury, and there's a black lady also. But I liked it a lot. I thought it was really interesting. It was weird. I don't know, the last time I watched like a courtroom drama, it felt like it should be set in like the 90s or something, or 80s or something.
I agree with you.
And
it felt
so
like
when
it needs
they're-
to be like
when they're using, like-
South in the 90s.
When they're using like Apple Watches and iPhones and stuff, I was like, this is not right. It should be like, and I don't know, that maybe the cars they drove was older also, so I was just kind of confused about the setting for a little bit.
It might just be how Clint Eastwood makes movies, because
He makes classic
his movies
style.
just have a classic film style to it.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
But overall, very good.
Cool.
I liked it thoroughly. And then,
That's good to hear.
in anticipation of Ballerina coming out, I watched 2 other movies with Keanu Reeves and Ana De Armas in them that I had never seen before. So I
Okay.
watched Exposed from 2016, which they both star in. Very weird movie. Has a 4.3 on IMDb.
Okay.
Probably out to.
So you're saying it's not great.
Yeah. So it's the only movie written and directed by G. Malik Linton, who was apparently he's mostly a physical trainer for actors in movies. He was a physical trainer for Leonardo DiCaprio in The Departed, and Tobey Maguire for Spider-Man, and Anne Hathaway for Dark Knight Rises. It's weird. It's about Keanu Reeves. He plays like a corrupt cop, or he's a police officer in LA. There's a lot of corruption involved, and his partner dies, and he's trying to like kind of look into it, and then he discovers there's a bunch of other corruption on the force and stuff. And then Ana de Armas is like this weird girl who sees strange things happening. I watched the trailer after seeing the movie, and it doesn't show any of the super weird parts in it. And so I feel like if you go into it, you're probably not expecting what it is. It plays like a very straight cop drama thriller, the trailer does. But in reality, she like sees these figures, angels maybe. It's just very bizarre people and behaviors and outfits and things that happen, and she just kind of sees them. It's honestly, it felt like if they're trying to take Street Kings with Keanu Reeves, but remove all the cool, exciting parts and add in Mulholland Drive things to it. That's what it felt like. It was just like, this is weird. So this is weird suddenly for no reason, and I'm not sure if it'll pay off ever. That's what Exposed it felt like to me.
Okay.
And then I watched Knock Knock from 2015.
That movie sucks.
I see why you don't like Eli Roth movies, because the more I watch of his, I'm like, this sucks. It also has a 4.9 on IMDb.
That movie's terrible.
Yeah, I just really don't care for his directing and writing choices. It seems like he doesn't make consistently good movies, barely passable movies, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say 4.9 is very, very generous. That's like diehard Eli Roth fans just like 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I didn't believe any of the choices the characters were making and why Keanu would fall into this trap. And
Right.
I was extremely annoyed by the girls and how I did kind of understand how he felt so trapped by them, and that there wasn't really a way out of their, I don't know, nonsense, shenanigans. But yeah, I didn't care for it. Not so fun.
The ending's so dumb too.
Yeah, the whole thing is dumb. And then the last thing, on a good note, I did watch Wick is Pain, the documentary.
Oh, that's out.
It came out a week or 2 ago.
Okay.
And I guess by the time this comes out, almost a month ago. It came out shortly after we recorded that John Wick episode.
I feel like I knew that. Oh, crap.
Yeah, it is good. It is very interesting. Even some of the things that we mentioned in the episode, they talk about, but it's of course much better coming from them than from us. And they kind of, I don't know, they do a really good job of shedding the light on really how dire it was trying to get this thing made, and a miracle that it ever got made, and then kind of what it became, and it's interesting seeing, like, you know, you see a movie and there's a certain writer credited for writing the movie, but with movies like John Wick and movies like Mission Impossible, you hear the people who are making it talk about it, and it's really Chad and Keanu talking about it. Like, we wanted to make a movie that has references to these animes or action movies, or we wanted to just like do this stunt sequence.
Yep.
And then they figure out a way to get to it.
Everything kind of revolves around it.
Yeah. And so like, we want to do this, we need to do this, we need to come up with a story, and then we give it to a writer, and he fills in all the holes, basically. Right. Is what it feels like in a lot of cases. But highly recommend it if you like the John Wick movies. Wick is Pain was a phenomenal documentary, and I think a good way to keep track of not only what it accomplished, but the legacy it's left so far.
Yeah, so crazy.
So
almost never should have
crazy.
gotten made, and now it's like one of the coolest franchises ever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here with Ballerina coming out soon.
It's true.
All right. You ready?
Should
That's
we do
a
it?
lot. Let's do
That
it.
was a lot. And just when you think there's no way they could talk about 20 more movies, we're about to.
Yes. So we're doing our top 10 bad dads. Top 10. So we did, I guess, a couple of years ago now, our favorite film fathers episode for Father's Day. Mm-hmm. And we thought we'd do another Father's Day episode, not just for the charity promotion we're doing, but also just for funsies, that we'll talk about some film fathers who were not so good.
A bit ironic. We're doing like this charity, you know, we're gonna donate for kids without fathers, struggling dads, and we're picking our top 10 worst. So
it's like a how to, what not to do kind of
like,
situation.
If you want to know what not to do or be like, these are the characters to reference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
the irony of it is kind of funny.
We picked our favorite worst dads.
I don't even know how to. I was like, they're not my favorite because every one of these guys is just such a piece of crap. And,
yeah. No, it's for real. It's real true.
Yeah. I did learn, but I can't get into it until much later into the episode. But I did have an interesting experience revisiting one of these characters, and I'll talk more in length on that. But my first question, though, before we start ranking them, how did you approach this? Because I went at it a very specific way, and I was curious about yours.
Okay. I kind of threw a bunch of stuff at the wall and saw what stuck. I had a couple in mind initially that I was like, well, definitely he's somewhere. And then I guess as I got into the list and started trying to rank them and order them, and is this guy really worse than this guy? I was definitely focusing on the parenthood aspect of their life and character more than all of the other things that they may do. Okay. And so there are people that I took off that I was like, they're a really, really bad person. But when they're with their kids, they're pretty good. So they're a pretty good dad. They're just a mass murdering asshole. But so then maybe I didn't have on the list. So that's what I tried to focus on. The fatherhood aspect was the key component, I would say. Okay.
Well, my very specific thing to aim for was none of the dads that I put on my list can have a redemptive quality, because there's a lot of cases where like a bad dad will be terrible throughout the whole story, and then the last like 10 minutes there's that redemption and there's that like embrace of love.
For sure.
None of mine have that. I had to make sure like you are
the worst of the worst.
The worst, like nothing redemptive. You're bad people. You should not ever be real, which is sad to say because there's probably a lot of terrible dads like the 20 we're about to talk about.
Yeah. I will say not all of mine are dreadful. Hearing you describe that, people are probably like, oh, well, that's very different than Jake's list, because Jake's list there are some, I guess, kind of funny ones, because I wanted to not keep it super dark, because I almost went super dark. I wanted to have some lightheartedness, but then also I do feel like I can still defend this is not a good like move as a father. Like this is very, very bad or very, very dangerous or whatever. My first couple, at least, are like that. And then it gets into the more, well, you really fucked up your children. So that's where we're at.
I am going to say I've got one that I think people are going to be like, really? And then I have one that I think you will appreciate that he's on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did try to like look through. I was like, which ones do I think Dustin will have? And I really couldn't guess. I'm going to be surprised, I think.
I really don't think we're going to have a crossover on this list. In fact, like at all. I'm more excited, kind of worried to hear your list in terms of you're going to name 10 characters that I'm going to be like, how did I not think of him? He is horrible.
Yeah.
And I'll probably second guess my entire list as you make yours. So
Yeah, I can see that going both ways for sure. It does tend to happen.
all right.
I did something that I do sometimes is after I feel like I have all of my people, I will Google other like worst whatever lists or top whatever lists just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything that somebody else would have mentioned. And I'm like, no, or yes, I already have that or whatever. And I did notice a lot of the like worst movie dads or worst TV dads or whatever. We're kind of all the same handful of people, and so I wanted to have several different ones as well, not just some of the obvious ones.
Mine's going to be some obvious guys, but I've got a
one
couple
or two
surprises
obvious
on mine.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to get into it?
Yeah, let's do this.
I don't even remember who started the last time we did a top 10.
What was our last top 10?
Directors. I don't even remember what our last top 10 was. Yes, directors. Thank you. It was a while ago.
It was a minute ago. Flip a coin?
I'll just go first.
Okay.
That way we could start with a fun one that you're probably going to make fun of me for. My number 10 worst film father is Wayne Zielinski from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Because how incredibly irresponsible is it?
Because he's so irresponsible.
To leave this experimental invention that he's never gotten functioning and doesn't even know what it will do in a place that's accessible to his children. They ends up shrinking them down, doesn't know he can bring them back, doesn't know where they are, doesn't know, like, he just completely out of control of the situation. The kids basically have to like survive and save themselves.
There is no basically have to. They literally have to figure out how to survive the backyard, a bowl of cereal, the attic.
Right. Yeah. Almost getting stepped on so many times. And
Swept
then
away.
not only once, he also blows up a kid the next time. And not blows up like an explosion.
Not boom, but like
in gargantuanizes, makes him very large, this baby that then walks around
that
terrorizing
goes all
Las
Stay
Vegas.
Puft Marshmallow Man in the big
Yes.
cities. So
Exactly. So yeah, just for a guy who's inventing death rays, shrinking rays, exploding rays, maybe lock the door. Maybe, have a system.
I think he's a good example of there needs to be a separation from work life and home life. Don't bring
Yes.
your work home. Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
That is such a funny pick. And now I feel so bad for my whole list because you went lighthearted and I'm going straight just like, you are horrible. Okay, here we go, folks.
I can't wait.
I'm not sure if you have seen this movie that my number 10 is from. And if you have not, I would probably suggest you don't, because I imagine it's a movie that you would hate. So
Okay.
save yourself the 2 hours. But my number 10, since you Googled some of these people, we're learning something new about each other. Mm-hmm. I do the same thing.
Well, good. It only took us 5 years to figure that
And
out.
I found out, like, oh, I've got a couple of these dudes on my list already. All right. So I was a little like, I thought I was being original with this guy, but I'm not. That's okay, because he sucks. My number 10 is a character named Bernard from the movie The Squid and the Whale.
I've not seen that movie.
Okay,
I've
so
heard of
don't
it.
watch it, Jake, because it'll just upset you, especially as a dad. So Jeff Daniels, great actor. He does a great job portraying this piece of crap dad who has like this super romanticized, pretentious perception of his existence as this college professor, author. And Jesse Eisenberg plays his oldest son, who kind of idolizes his dad, and he feeds that idolatry from his son. He just keeps like stoking that fire. His whole demeanor throughout the movie, he's very off-putting. The conversations that he has with his children, who are 15 years old and, crap, I'm getting the youngest wrong, 13 years old. I think there's 2 years between them, are the kind of conversations a father should never have with children and his sons. Especially, like, he takes his kids to hear one of his students, played by Anna Paquin, who is a very young college student in this movie. I know it was like after X-Men, but it's Anna Paquin. I almost feel like she's always going to be very young.
Yeah.
She reads this poem or story that she wrote that is very overtly sexualized, and the conversation between the dad and his two sons, teenage boys in the car, is very graphic dialogue that I'm not going to repeat, but it's the kind of dialogue where you're like, why would you put that in a movie? But he like encourages this kind of behavior from his sons, and then him and his wife separate. Don't worry, that's not a spoiler. It's part of the story. But the way that he berates and talks down about his ex-wife to their children, to the point where he no longer calls her their mom, he uses her legal name while talking about her. It's such a cliche kind of thing about divorce, is the parents don't get along to the point where they're going to do nothing but talk bad about each other.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's a tough one to hear and watch because it's so real. So his character is one of the biggest piece of crabs who never learns how to better his ways. He just actually progressively gets worse as the movie continues. And the ending is just like, it ends and you're like, that's a story that got made, I guess. So yeah,
right.
Bernard is a giant piece of crap.
But which one is the squid and which one is the whale?
It's not it's literally the squid and the whale at this museum. It's a big old display in the middle of the museum of a giant whale fighting a giant squid. That's
sounds important.
I wish there was a deeper meaning to it. There's really not.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
My number 9 is Peter McAllister from Home Alone.
You're gonna make me seem like such a downtrodden, depressed dude. I'm not.
This is my last funny one, I promise.
Okay.
The rest are very horrible people.
I'm upset now that I'm coming across as like, wow, Dustin went real dark on this list, guys.
But Peter McAllister, I've always thought he doesn't really mind that his son is
He's
home
kind of
alone.
an idiot.
He seems not that concerned about it, and he's just
No.
like, yeah, he'll figure it out. Yeah, like that he's at home in the suburbs. He's fine. We'll be gone for a week or more in Paris, an old other country, and he really doesn't seem concerned about getting home at all. It seems like the only reason that he does come home early is because his wife makes a big stink about it.
Right. Now, I'm not defending Peter McAllister, but as adults who have grown up watching Home Alone and still love it to this day because it is a fantastic... Both of them are incredible. And if anyone talks bad about the second one, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But let's just be honest, Jake. In the first movie, all crisis could have been averted had the cop not pounded on the door like a madman, scaring the young 7-year-old boy who's home alone.
That's true.
Of course, then, let's take it another notch and say it could have been averted if Peter McAllister was a better dad, stood up for his son when the uncle calls him a little jerk and, embarrasses him during dinner. I think if our kids were talked to that way from someone not, within the immediate family, there would be some assertion made.
Oh, yeah. I would say so for sure. Yeah, he just seems kind of absent and not a good father. And I mean, I'll give a lot of grace to any parent, especially dads. You're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna screw things up, but we try to learn from it and avoid it. Kids will do things and things will happen. And you're like, I had no possible way to think that was even possible. And but you kind of lose a little bit of that grace when it happens twice in a year or two, and he does the same mistake and leaves the same kid behind. Like, that kid is going to feel unloved for the rest of his life now.
I mean, he already does. My family hates me.
Yeah, exactly. Just feels so forgotten, and he's on his own. Luckily, he's resourceful, but it's really nobody else gets credit besides Kevin himself. So
I'll tell you that you'll laugh about this. I don't want to call it an honorable mention. So dishonorable mention. I did have him as could McAllister be on there? Because he's kind of not a good dad. But,
yeah.
All right.
And that's speaking to your point of not being redeemable. It's not like he learns his lesson or ever apologizes or anything.
Dude, he never says sorry.
He just kind of shows back up. He's like, "We're here again."
Yeah.
Hey,
Kevin, you're all right. How dare you rack up a room service bill while we, weren't paying attention to our child in the airport. I respect that pick, Jake. I respect that one. All right, my number 9 is okay. So he's not the worst on my list in terms of verbal abuse or even super violence against the child. He is a killer. He is a killer who's just trying to get back to his son, but not for any redeemable way. He's just doing it. But this guy, I saw this movie at such a young age, as did you, that he just kind of set this like tone for bad dads in stories that really stuck with me my whole life. And that is Crisp from Kindergarten Cop.
Okay.
So he's on the list because when I saw this movie at such a young age, like just seeing this dude be so creepy and trying to get back to his son when he should not be around children, period. And then to up the ante, he even puts the gun to his son's head during the conflict with Kimball.
Right.
And so that's why he's on my list. One, he set just like a real, like, don't be like that guy. Like,
right.
Wow, some dads are just the worst ever.
Right. So it's kind of unfair that even murderous crime lords can also have children.
Right.
And you have to grow up as his child now.
There's got to be better dads out there. And there are. Yeah, so he's on my list primarily because at such a young age, he set that kind of like, he made that impression on me that really, he became kind of that like, that baseline for bad dads in movies for me of like, Crisp started it and everyone else really jumped over the line. To quote Joey, the line is a dot to the rest of my list. So,
yeah, exactly.
And for the kids, they don't get that one, but that's okay.
That's okay. All right. So my first actual, it was hard to put this guy on my list as far as like an actual bad dad. So there were, I guess, another element of my decision-making process. I did look into a bunch of like horror movie dads, and it was hard to like include ones that, don't really have control over the situation. They're either like possessed by the devil or they're possessed by like an evil spirit. So they're just kind of doing things like Ryan Reynolds in Amityville Horror or
right. I considered
like
him,
that.
But then I changed my mind.
Yeah, it's like they're ones where they probably should be better, but also you can't fully blame them. They're not as responsible for their situation. My number 8 is kind of adjacent to that, where he's also kind of a victim of his own situation, and he's in a situation that's really hard for him to get out of. Okay. But the movie does such a good job of showing how his now adult children have to deal with him as a dad and how the impression he left on them, that you really end up feeling like they are successful in spite of you, kind of thing. And so I felt like he fit on the list. So my number 8 is Patty Conlon from Warrior.
Okay.
Yeah, played by the great Nick Nolte.
Who is he talking about? You went from horror movies to Warrior.
Well, the reason that he doesn't like have full control over, I guess, or it's hard to blame him for his bad decisions because he's an alcoholic. He's obviously struggling with addiction and has his whole life, and so his kids kind of just see him as that, see him as useless, see him as a drunk, and he wants to help, wants to train them, but he's just not reliable, not a good coach, not a good father, and so they, both sons, and Warrior is such a phenomenal movie, one of my favorite movies ever.
It's a really good movie.
And it just shows that dynamic between the two different sons and kind of how they each took it. They each took his alcoholism or abuse or whatever in different directions, and then end up coming back together in this clash, fighting each other in UFC. So it's a really cool movie, but I think that the family dynamic is also a big part, and it's contrasted by seeing Brendan, what's his name, Joel Edgerton, who has like a family and is a good dad and kind of has put in the work to overcome where he came from, and then doesn't want his dad involved in his grandson's life because of that, because he doesn't want to continue that problem in the next generation, which is I think a good move.
Don't want a chance that it permeates or seeps in. Yep.
Exactly. So, Patty
Yeah.
Conlon.
Yeah. That's a good one. There is one I'm expecting you to have on. I left him off on purpose on my list in the hopes that he's on yours. Kind of similar to what you were just talking about, though, which we'll get to later, I guess. So my number 8 is another one I'm not sure if you've seen before, but he was literally the first name that popped in my mind when we were like, let's do the worst dads, because this guy is horrible. And he's not abusive or anything. He's just so cowardly. He is just one of the biggest cowards I've ever seen on film. And Robin Williams plays him perfectly. So my number 8 is a character called Lance, and it's from World's Greatest Dad. So if you haven't seen this movie, it is about this father and son. Robin Williams is the dad, obviously.
Yeah.
He's a teacher at a high school, and let's see here, when you're trying to rank most irritating, obnoxious characters in movies, right? You've got like, man, I had my joke set up and now it's gone, and now I feel bad.
I know, I'm trying to save it by thinking of obnoxious characters in movies.
It's okay. So
Jar
when you
Jar Binks.
compare him to like the screaming child from Babadook,
Yes.
think of that, but without all the screaming, but with just vulgarity. Same level of obnoxious, like, this character needs to not ever exist. That's the son in World's Greatest Dad.
Okay, so not that far from Jar Jar Binks.
No. Well, the son dies by accidentally killing himself while doing, I can't even remember the actual name. He chokes himself to death while
Autoerotic
masturbating.
asphyxiation.
Thank you.
I was like, that's going to be a big word.
And the way that the dad grieves is by, and this is why he's on my list, he exploits his son's death to gain sympathy and celebrity from everyone around him.
Makes it about him.
Yeah, and that's why Lance is on my list, is because he takes, he's not involved enough in his son's life or ever asserts himself into his son's life to actually be a dad, and lets his son just run rampant with a lot of horrible things that he says. But then he exploits his teenage son's death for celebrity status. And I think that's one of the like grossest things ever put on film. Williams does a great job acting in the movie, and it has some very dark humor moments, but it's not exactly like, I loved it back in the day. Rewatching it again, I was like, maybe I don't like this movie as much as I used to. But so exploiting your child's death for your own gain, not a good look.
Not a good look at all. All right. Well, there's a segue there to my number 7 then, because my number 7 does also exploit his son, not in his death while he's a child and alive and healthy, but then he also kind of abandons him after he gets injured. So, and it might be one of the more predictable ones on my list. I don't know if it's the one you said you thought I would have, but we'll see. My number 7 is Daniel Plainview from There Will Be Blood.
Not the one I thought, but not shocked that he's on your list, because he does exploit his son.
Yeah. So, son in quotation marks. He's I think the only one that's an adopted dad on my list, because he adopts HW after his real father, who was working for Daniel as an oil worker, dies on the job. And so he just kind of feels like he has to adopt him. But then he basically uses him as kind of a prop to sell this family man image that we are father and son oil men, but he doesn't really seem to care about him very much. And then he does put his child's life in danger, even more so than Rick Moranis in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Whereas around heavy equipment that then explodes and injures him and makes him go deaf. And at that point, he gets kind of frustrated. They can't control him and make him do the things he wants him to do in order to be a success. So he sends him away to school and kind of just out of sight, out of mind. And I think he's one of the first characters that I thought of for this list. I was like, definitely Daniel Plainview is showing up, mostly for that one "I've abandoned my child" scene, because that sells It sells the sentiment of a bad dad, but you don't get the intention that he actually believes it. They just kind of.
Oh no, I think it's very obvious how heartless, and that scene is a great example of just like, wow, this guy will exploit any situation for his own personal gain. So yeah, terrible dad.
Right. He does seem to kind of maybe later in life come to regret his life choices, like when he's drinking in the bowling alley at the end. But it's also way too little, way too late at that point. And so, yeah, definitely one of the worst dads out there, even if it's not biological.
He is a bad dad. I rewatched There Will Be Blood last week. One, because I was like, is Daniel going to be on my list? Because I thought of him too. And he's an honorable mention, dishonorable. He's not on the top 10, but
yeah,
it's going to mess me up. But rewatching it for the first little bit, I was like, man, I don't know yet. I don't know where he would be. He almost made the list just with like the final scene between him and his son. Almost made the list just because of that conversation that they have where I'm like, man, you were just gross. But he's not on the list. Instead, I just got to say that movie, I forgot how just incredible that movie is.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, knowing that No Country for Old Men was being filmed across the like plane from it, and they both came out the same year, like very close to each other, right?
Yeah, I think it was a couple months or something like that.
How do we get these two just absolutely amazing films back to back like that? What a time. Yeah, that's a great one, dude. That's a great pick. Nothing wrong with that one.
Yeah.
My number 7 does not have a lot of screen time. I think he's only on the screen for like maybe a total of 3 minutes, maybe 4.
Oh, wow.
But it's within those very few scenes that they do something great, which you and I talk about a lot, where less can be more in films, where the implication, where your mind runs wild with what things might, actually, like how far things can go. They do an amazing job of kind of forcing your mind to really run wild with implications without ever actually stating anything or showing a lot. And so that's why he's on the list, is because for such little screen time, he makes such a huge impression. And that is Mr. Marsh from It.
Yeah. Yeah, Beverly's dad.
Beverly's dad, for just a few well-placed lines, and that actor does such a great job of delivering that creepy predator, just bleh.
Yeah, 100%.
Like every time I watch that movie when he's on screen, and I remember even when we like saw it in the theater and when I read the book, it's just every time he shows up, you're just like on edge. You're like, this guy is, I don't ever want to even let my mind try to imagine the horrors that he puts Beverly through.
Yeah.
Having read the book, they're not good.
It's maybe better on screen where it is implied.
But he does such a good job, and I can't remember the actor's name, but yeah, for such small screen time, especially in chapter 1, I think he unnerves me more than like Pennywise ever did. Which is, you're supposed to actually, that's the parents in the movie are supposed to be the actual horror of the story. And Mr. Marsh is the face of it. So the worst one in my mind for sure. Yeah. I considered Mr. Marsh for sure, but he's also very similar in time on screen and theme and impact as another one on my list. I was like, well, mix it up, have a little more diversity, and choose someone else instead. But yeah, he is the worst. I fully support that. Bad, man. He's so bad.
My number 6 is. I think you mentioned The Coward before. I have a coward on my list as well. So I went with Donald Harris from 28 Weeks Later.
Okay.
And kind of like
man, I didn't even think of him. He sucks.
He does suck. And kind of like I mentioned before, there are fathers that you kind of can't blame because they're possessed or whatever. He's in that category later in the movie where he does become infected as a zombie, but way before that, while he's still a
The
human person,
opening scene.
he makes terrible decisions and lets his wife and children die and just
Gosh.
leaves them, abandons them. And it's just the worst. Luckily, they don't die, and he finds them later. But it's just because of that, when he does end up becoming infected, there's a part of you as the audience that thinks his bond to his children should be strong enough to prevent him from chasing them and trying to rip them to shreds. And so you also then still kind of blame him a little bit for that he doesn't do that he does chase them and try to murder them and eat them after having left them to die earlier on. And so, yeah, he's just no good whatsoever. Doesn't really ever redeem himself.
No, I forgot about him. Oh, he sucks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like you and I have talked about how bad he is before.
Maybe.
I
We've talked
feel
about
like
how
we've-
28 Weeks Later is definitely underappreciated for how good it is.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, maybe it was during the sequel. Yeah, he sucks. He's so bad. That look he gives to his wife during the opening sequence is just every time you're like, like you need to get slugged.
Yeah.
I've always had that thought when he does finally like actually get infected, where you kind of have that like, you deserve it.
Yeah.
Like, yep.
Exactly.
Yep. You don't deserve to make it to the end. Nope. Spoiler
Yeah,
alert, folks.
screw this guy.
Yeah, he sucks. Wow. All right. Good pick, Jake. Good pick.
Thank you.
All right. So my number 6 is the one that I think you'll appreciate because I'm not sure how many people know about this movie or saw it. But I know you have, and if memory is correct, you saw it fairly recently. Fairly.
Okay. Sure.
So my number 6 is Terry Glass from The Glass House, which was a movie that came out in 2000.
The Glass
2001,
House.
because it came out right after, it was one of the first movies that came out after 9/11.
Oh, yeah. I have seen this movie.
Yes.
I was thinking of the Sandra Bullock Keanu Reeves rom-com movie. What's that? That's also
Lake
glass
House?
related. Lake House. Well, the Lake House is mostly glass, is why I was thinking.
That's true. It is glass. Oh,
Yes,
that
The
dad
Glass House
sucks
is-
too.
There's a dad in that movie?
Yeah.
Oh, his dad.
Yeah, his dad. His dad sucks too.
That's true. That's
man.
true. But yeah, I did see The Glass House recently. We had like a weird early 2000s thriller horror movie marathon where like, I've never seen this movie. And it was
That's
fun.
a good time to have that. I didn't. It's been a while since I've watched The Glass House, but when I sat down and rewatched it, I was like, man, this might have the quintessential like early 2000s coming right out of the 90s feel, with just the way that it's filmed, the whole look of it, like the acting,
Color grading and everything.
all of it felt just, oh, this is strangely dated. But
Yeah.
Terry
In
Glass.
like a comfy way.
Right. Terry Glass is not biological dad. He's legal guardian who has to take on father responsibilities. But he's not on the up and up. And he's super creepy during the whole movie. He's
Yeah.
on my list because his motivations are never out of care for the children. It is all very self-absorbed and exploitive.
Yeah.
And murderous.
Right. Generally a ne'er-do-well.
Yeah. Yes, I do have a list full of murderers, just so you're aware. Well, I shouldn't say
Murder's
full
bad.
of, but I have a handful. But there's so many moments, and Stellan Skarsgård plays it so well, of just that super creepy undertones where he's manipulative, he's primarily manipulative. Every time he drinks, you're like, I feel really unsafe for the children, especially the daughter. And he's always around whenever she's kind of in a precarious position, whether she's swimming or trying to change on her first night at the house or in the car with him.
Yeah.
He's just, his character, you feel like, is that character that just won't ever stay at a boundary. He's always just going to keep getting worse and worse. And so he made my list. I was like, you know what? You're underrated and gross. So you are here. sir.
Yeah, no, I fully support that. I also feel like as for those kids who are in a much more vulnerable position than like normal kids who grew up in a house, like they're coming into a place and you as the audience or just as a normal person want them to be taken care of and shown the love they haven't had really in a long time.
Yeah.
And for them to not have that and end up in a worse place than they were before, it's terrifying.
It's terrible. I will say I forgot that the actor that played the younger brother is the same kid from The Patriot. He plays the middle son.
Yeah.
All I kept seeing was not from The Patriot. Man, I lost the movie, but he plays this character who he has a commercial for soup, and they just replay his commercial in the movie, and it's the worst acting ever, and it's supposed to be on purpose, but the way he played the younger brother in the glass house, all I saw was that commercial from him, and it was like, you're acting in this movie like you did in that commercial, which was supposed to be like a joke. Not good. Not good at all.
I'm picturing you on the couch like Leonardo DiCaprio in that meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where it's like,
yeah, like,
it's a soup kid.
it's the soup kid. I gotta find which one it is.
That's funny. Watching The Glass House and being reminded of it not just now reminded me that when I watched it the first time and I was like, oh, these kids are, displaced and looking for a foster home and all that stuff, reminded me of the 90s movie with Leslie Nielsen, Rent a Kid, and how I grew up loving that movie, but I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and I want to check it out again.
It was The Sixth Sense. He plays the bully. Who he's the rich bully kid, and who wants to be he takes himself as a serious actor, and he's telling all of them, I was in that commercial. I had my own trailer. And they show it, and it's just the worst, don't feel good. That's how he played the whole character in The Glass House. Anyways,
that's amazing.
It made me laugh. And yes, that meme would be accurate.
Soup kid. All right, my number 5 is probably the least bad person left on my list, because he's not a terrible, he doesn't do horrible things, he's not a mass murderer or whatever, but he's just a general bastard and a dick to everyone for no reason. And he is a horrible father in the way that he treats one of his children way worse, like they don't even exist, compared to another child that he completely dotes on. And I feel like that's unacceptable as a parent. And he also eats tomatoes in the most disgusting way imaginable. I'm talking about the ruling steward of Gondor, Denethor II from Lord of the Rings: Return of the King.
This is a very,
Just the way that he treats Faramir and the way that he doesn't give a crap about him or his life or his situation or whatever, especially once he learns that Boromir died, and that's just all that he can do is focus on Boromir and Boromir's death, and every flashback is how he's like, hey Boromir, how's it going? Love you, buddy, you're the best son, you're the only son I even have. And Faramir's right there like, I am also your son, I am also your son, Dad. And it's just it makes you feel so bad for Faramir, for at least as a viewer. And the way it's portrayed by John Noble, he's just such a gross dude that you're like, this guy is bad. Even though he never does anything truly horrible, he's not a great leader as a steward of Gondor, but I mean, he's just a horrible father to one of his children.
You could argue that he does do a couple really terrible, horrible things. One being forcing his surviving son to ride into certain death, knowing you're going to die, but I won't grieve over you.
It's completely expendable.
When you lose, I'll just blame you for losing. But then refusing to listen to Gandalf and trying to burn Faramir alive. You could argue those are pretty terrible, horrible.
Those are all terrible, but they're all focused on Faramir and how he hates him for some reason.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
He's horrible. And yes, there's something about the tomato.
Yeah.
There's
it's
something
the straw that breaks your back. You're like, no. This guy is done. I'm completely over it.
There's just something about it's not just the tomato though. It's how he eats and gathers that whole plate during that whole scene where you're like, you are just so not good.
Well, listening to the most beautiful singing you ever heard in your life.
That song, man.
Yeah, it would change your life if you were a normal person.
All right, Pippin. That's a great pick, dude. That's a great pick. I loved how you emphasized, and the worst way to eat tomatoes. Yes. It's true.
Truly.
Well, my number 5 is kind of only at number 5 because I did feel like I needed a little levity, a little like, okay, we'll breathe with like, he's still horrible. He is still just the worst. But the movie that he's in is fun, it's silly, the story is still uplifting even with the terrible characters that are in it. So he's on the list because he really is a terrible dad. It's a good segue too because he favors one child over the other child, which doesn't make any sense throughout the whole story because the child he favors is an idiot and the child he hates is like the smartest human being on the planet. Oh, and she's got like crazy mind powers. So my number 5 is Mr. Wormwood from Matilda, played by Danny DeVito.
I recently learned that he directed that movie.
Yes, he directed it. And not only did he direct it, but off screen, while that actress was kind of struggling with her own like real life family issues, he was the one that was being like very fatherly, genuinely fatherly to her. So it is kind of funny that Danny DeVito can play such a wretched dad, but he's actually like known as being one of the kindest human beings there is. So good on you, Danny DeVito. Good on you.
I've never seen Matilda, and I think I told somebody recently, maybe I told my wife this recently, and I feel like, I should lose a point for my millennialness because that is one of those cornerstone movies, it seems like.
It really is. You would get a big kick out of Matilda just because it's so silly and ridiculous. I mean, Matilda develops like psychic powers and uses them in very silly ways. But the practical effects of the movie, you would just... You'd be like, this is amazing. So
for a long time, I thought it was the same movie as Harriet the Spy. I was like, yeah, of course I've seen it. And then I'm like, no, wait, this is not what I'm thinking it is.
Drastically different movies. He's so verbally abusive to Matilda. He calls her an idiot and worthless throughout the entire film while favoring the oldest son who fedges out in front of the TV at all chances he can get. He tries to teach his son how to like swindle people out of money because he's a used car salesman and who gloats about robbing people and screwing them over. And some of the funniest parts of it is Matilda's reading books and he like tells her only morons read books. You should watch TV like every normal human being there is. It's just, they're watching like game shows. It's funny. But he's so like dismissive as a father, even with the oldest son, even though he favors the older son, he does nothing that's actually edifying for either child. And so he's on the list just to kind of give levity because the movie is so lighthearted, but his character is just gross, so gross, and how he talks about and talks to Matilda in particular. So
okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so we're getting into the darker side of my list now.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the only lighthearted one. Mine gets real gross from here on out, so...
Yeah, me too. My number 4 might be the most gross, at least as far as what you're actually shown on screen. My number 4 is Norman Nordstrom, also known as the blind man from Don't...
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, no. Also kind of... Does he count as a... he kind of does is a on dad. A technicality, yeah.
Not a the whole point of the movie is that he was a father, and his daughter dies in a car accident, and he has this weird, twisted, slight glimmer of justice in his mind where he feels like the girl that crashed and killed my daughter now owes me another one. She should replace the one she took from me. And so he kidnaps that young woman and locks her in the basement. It's not rape, but it's rape by proxy as he turkey bastes her and keeps her in her house until she gives him a baby. And at this point, you're like, you are the last person who should have a baby. No one in the world should let you have this baby in your house if it ever comes to fruition. And thankfully it doesn't, but then he tries to make it happen again. And it's just the worst thing possible.
Man, the moment you said, don't breathe, like, it's amazing how that movie it's an hour and a half long movie, right? Just under 2 hours, maybe.
Probably.
And for the majority of the film, it's like this break-in movie where these young punks are breaking into this blind guy's house and they're trying to rob him, but then all of a sudden he's got crazy Liam Neeson skills. And you're like, this is a wild film. But then the basement happens and you're like, what?
And if you're like me, you were on his side at first. You're like, yeah, these dumb kids, you're an old man, you're blind, they broke in your house, you don't know their intentions. Yeah, you can defend your house.
Right.
Go ahead, kill them. I don't really care. But then you get to that point, you're like,
then you
nope,
get to the basement.
I'm off the blind guy train at this point.
And it's just so gross from there on out. Man, the moment you said don't breathe, my brain was like, basement, like, nope.
Yeah.
There's a reason I'll never be able to look at the turkey baster the same way, ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Oh, it's so gross.
Oh. I feel sick.
Sorry.
Man, no joke. You came swinging on that one. Wow.
Yeah.
Ugh.
All right, we can move on.
Yeah. The irony is, that's actually a really good movie and probably one of the most intense movies I've seen.
Oh, yeah.
And I would recommend to watch it. Just no. It gets gross. Well, mine's not turkey baster disgusting. But in terms of irresponsibility, he's high on my list, not just for the stupid, deceptive choice he makes to further his career or reignite his career, but it's his choice to continue to dive into it when everything is screaming red flags and you should run. He just keeps going further down the rabbit hole, even as it starts endangering his whole family. So my number 4 is Ellison Oswalt from Sinister. And he's on this list because he moves his family to this quaint little neighborhood where horrific murder has happened, and you find out it's in the house that it happened that he moves his family in. And then as the weird, evil, demonic things begin to happen to him and his family, he just keeps going down the rabbit hole. He just keeps drinking away and further inciting the demonic stuff, and he just never learns anything. Even when they give you the hint, like, he's finally like, yep, done with this, new dealer, then he gets right back into it, and you're like, you're an idiot, dude. You're so bad. You're so bad at what you do. Yeah, he's high on my list just because of how irresponsible do you have to be to reignite your writing career. You should put your family first. You should be putting your children above your career like that. Like, oh my gosh.
Not put them at risk like that.
Right. Especially when you're dealing with like a mass murdering demon that eats souls and children. So bad rap, man.
Yeah. If you ever find yourself in that situation, don't do that.
Yeah, right. Like, make a better choice.
Yeah, it's not that hard.
It's not. It's really not.
Mine is in a similar vein of I guess, mass murdering demons. And there's an argument, there's a way you could argue this to say that he's not that bad of a dad, but I feel like overall, through the breadth of his children's lives and kind of the early ages that he introduces some horrible things to them, overall, I feel like he's not a good dad. So my number 3 is, his name is Dad Meeks from Frailty.
I almost had him on the list. I was like, when you teach your children when they're like 9 and 10 how to slaughter people.
Yeah, generally frowned upon. Yeah, just Frailty is such a good movie, by the way. If anybody hasn't seen it, such a good movie. And I didn't even realize Bill Paxton directed it.
Yep.
But he plays a great character who is the dad of these 2 boys, but he believes, I think he's sincere. I don't know if others would argue that he's intentionally doing it for evil. I think he's sincere, that he believes that he can tell when another person has done something evil or is possessed by a demon or whatever, and it's his job, he feels, to kidnap them and kill them and destroy that demon or destroy that evil within them. And so he does, but he also recruits his 2 young children to help him. And in all other aspects of his life, he's a pretty good dad, or a pretty good, he takes care of them. He, does all of the normal things. But there's this one glaring little detail that does occupy most of their life, it seems.
Right. It's not just that he teaches them how to kill. He encourages them to dismember the victims. Mm-hmm. And that's gross. And then he does it saying that, God gave him the vision to do this and to go out and man, that's not exactly how that works, but okay. It's pretty twisted. And the movie sells it well because it's from the perspective of his adult son, played by Matthew McConaughey, who's talking to the police about all of the things that he did, or things that he and his dad did, or his dad got him to do, or brainwashed him and his brother to do. Yeah. And kind of admitting all this stuff. And so you're kind of seeing from his perspective how it affected him, and you definitely feel sympathy for him. And so I think for all of that, and then the whole movie, it just unfolds in such a great way. So I think overall, when it comes to it in the end, pretty bad dad. He's up there. He's not good. Even if you took away the he believes that he's killing demons, which I'm with you. I think he sincerely does. I think the character does sincerely believe that he is following the direction of God to destroy demons. I would say he's very deceived. But if you took away the spiritual aspect of it, what gets me is the style of discipline that he gives, especially the older son, of you're going to dig this hole forever, and I'm going to lock you in the basement for a week and starve you for a week.
Yeah.
That's abusive. So even for
Torture,
19...
for sure.
Oh man, what decade does that take place in? 70s, right?
70s, I think. Late 70s, probably.
I think so. It's either late 60s or it's somewhere in that range. Even for that time frame.
Yeah.
That's still widely frowned upon by many people.
Yeah. Yeah. And the movie tells it in a good story, in the sense that it leaves
it's such a good movie.
Questioning that there were some of the people that did do bad things. You're well, maybe he was right. Maybe maybe that's all true. But it's hard to tell. And so it's really, really well done.
Yeah, great movie. All right. So glad you put him on your list. Well, my number 3 is from an older movie, 1987, maybe I forgot to write the date down. Anyways, it stars a guy that you and I, 1987, yes, nice. Are very familiar with. In fact, we're really, really big fans of probably his most famous character ever, Mr. Terry O'Quinn, who played Locke on Lost. Yes. Well, as awesome and incredible and just challenging and all that as Locke was, he played this kind of iconic character in horror films who is not redemptive, is very evil, and a mass murdering psychopath. So I'm talking Jerry Blake from The Stepfather, because the opening of the movie is him cleaning up after mass murdering his first family and then going to prepare to mass murder his second family. And it's not so that you don't see a lot of violence throughout the movie, but the fact that it starts off with what his goal actually is and how patient he is with things for the most part, and how he snakes his way to try and get close to his stepdaughter, especially, who questions him from the get-go. He plays this character so well, and as you watch him losing it and really coming to that head of well, I guess it's time to just murder everybody so I can move on to the next one. Terry O'Quinn plays him so well. He plays his character so great, and it helps that the movie's actually really entertaining too, because it's a fun little late 80s thriller, which probably my favorite thing about it is it doesn't rely on trying to throw any twists. It opens with, he's going to kill people. Yeah. Watch how he plots it. I appreciate it.
I feel like that's more effective in the sense that he's been successful. Yeah. And so you are more apt to believe that he will succeed again, as opposed to if he was doing it his first time, you're like, well, they need to stop him, but he's he's never done it before, so it wouldn't matter.
But he, the fact that he's one of the guys on my list that you actually see murder or attempt to murder a family, and having seen him walk through all the blood and clean up toys around their corpses and stuff. It's kind of gross, but he's played so well. And it's just one of those things. It's like every parent's fear, or at least every decent dad's fear, if there was ever to be a stepfather in the life of, like, that's why we'd have trust issues with the stepfather role. It's roles like this from Terry O'Quinn. So it's a cool movie too, especially for the 80s. But yeah, his character is pretty evil because he's a mass murdering psychopath.
It's a good reason. Can't argue with that at all.
That's right.
My number 2, you could say, is the worst dad of all time just because he's literally the devil. John Milton from The Devil's Advocate.
All right. Way to just throw that one out there.
And you don't know that Milton is the dad of Kevin Lomax, Keanu Reeves' character. Spoiler alert, by the way.
That's kind of a big spoiler.
But as far as bad dads go, it's hard to get worse than the devil.
I mean, that's fair.
And then not only that he does so many terrible things. I was looking at, so there's a villains wiki, and they list John Milton on the list, and they list his crimes that he's committed, and it's a very long list of like torture and spiritual corruption and mass murder and rape. And, yeah, every crime you could think of. He's
kind of done it all.
But he not only he gets his son to ignore his wife and then get her committed to a mental institution, kind of abandons her, and then tries to get his son to conceive the Antichrist with his biological half-sister.
There it is.
That's his main goal. And overall, I would say, as far as dads go, that's pretty bad. Now I feel like my last two are they
the
end
pale
of all humankind would be a pretty big deal.
I like that you just threw that one in there like so casually. Well, my number 2, just so that it's not that obvious and the ultimate like I win card, the devil. It's great.
I almost had him at number 1. I was like, how do I get worse than this? And then the more I thought about number 1, and just as a movie character, I felt like number 1 I felt like fit more for the theme. But 2, I was like, it can't be lower than 2.
I don't even know how to segue into my that's the show, folks. That's it.
No, I want you to hear my number 1. What are you doing? And I also want to hear yours.
Yeah. All right. I just loved how casual you were about that. My number 2 is Satan.
Yeah.
Mine's not.
Just a normal guy who kind of sucks.
Yeah. So my number 2 is a movie that I remember watching pretty young, and it reminded me, like, I watched a handful of movies that have very similar themes, or at least emotional arcs, very close to this one. So they all kind of blurred together, and I found myself like, I can't remember which level of horribleness this dad character is. So rewatching it again, I was like, yeah, I really hate you so much. It's a good movie. Retract that.
Okay.
It's a very well-made movie that is very difficult to watch just because of the kind of verbal and physical abuse that the main character, the boy, goes throughout the course of the film at the hands of this character. Incredible acting. Like, it's one of those movies where, like, it's great on all the technicalities, but it's not necessarily one I would recommend people seek out and watch to feel good about themselves, because you really don't. So my number 2 is Dwight, played by Robert De Niro in This Boy's Life. It's a very early Leonardo DiCaprio film, before he was like a big name. It was pre What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Not by much, but it was before that one. Robert De Niro plays the stepdad, and it's one of those things where he comes across, the first scene you meet him in, you're immediately kind of taken aback because you're like, oh, something's not right. He overplays the niceness. He overplays the fun or silly things, the jokes. When he really starts letting his true colors come through, it just progressively gets more violent and progressively gets worse. I will say Leonardo DiCaprio's character doesn't do anything to try to kind of equalize that or try to like smooth things over. He also gets worse, but that's not a victim shame thing. It's a very honest portrayal of how two wrongs don't make rights. In fact, they just kind of keep escalating and get worse and worse the more they continue to combat. But there's just certain scenes and pieces of dialogue between Dwight and the son that it's very difficult to watch. It's very difficult to listen to. That it just makes you like, man, De Niro plays it almost too well, to the point where you're kind of like, is De Niro not a good person? Or is he just that good of an actor in these moments? And I'm going to give him the grace of saying he's just that good of an actor. But it's a very tough movie to watch. It's a very tough character to watch because of how abusive he is. So, Yep, he's my number 2.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely rough.
Yeah.
All right. Number 1.
So who's worse than Satan, Jake?
Well, not worse in a broad humanity aspect.
All right, fair.
But worse in the individual life of this person.
Okay.
And so his child, his daughter. I feel like this is the other. I had Daniel Plainview and this one come to mind immediately when we talked about bad dads. And I put this one so high because through the course of the movie, it shows the effect of having a bad dad, even for just a few years at a young age, can just really mess up your life. And it's really hard to come back from overall. So my number 1 is Mr. Kieran, or Jenny's dad from Forrest Gump.
Gosh.
And
yeah,
he also doesn't have much screen time, but just the way that Forrest innocently describes him as a very loving man who was always hugging on and kissing on his Jenny and her sister, you immediately know it's bad news. And you also know, based on their living situation and walking through the corn with a bottle and stuff, that it's his fault that they live in, that they're poor and live in a bad house, and she just comes from a bad place. But then it is very clear through the course of the movie that his abuse of her and her sister really messed her up mentally and emotionally, and is the reason it's his fault that she struggles so much in life at trying to grow up, trying to have bad relationships with other boys in college, running away, getting involved in drugs, being a stripper, being like all of this other stuff, contracting different ailments and diseases and stuff. It's just her whole life is so close to falling apart so many times, almost killed herself. Like, it's just all comes back to that moment, that couple of years as a kid, and that's all it took to completely mess her up. So yeah, I think even though the movie's not even about her, and I also feel like in memes in the last few years, it's become kind of a joke that Jenny is one of the worst villains in cinema history because of the way that she, strung Forrest along and broke his heart and all of this stuff, and then dies as soon as he's happy with her for a minute. But it's not her fault. Like, she is a victim of this situation, and this guy, her dad, is definitely the villain of the story and the reason for all of the bad things that happened to her. So the movie, I've talked about Forrest Gump a lot in this show, but the movie, even though it's not about her, all of the different moments you check in with her, I feel like you get to see more and more of that unraveling happening. And it's not obviously tied back to the dad, but it's not hard to tie it back to the dad.
No, I would actually say it is kind of, it's a hard look at the effects of lack of father in a child's life and the effects that it has on their adult lives. Yeah, that's a good one, man. That's a tough one.
And it's also hard to see, like we're talking about this charity thing. It's hard to think that there are some cases where no dad is better than a bad dad like this. And that is unfortunately the case.
In Jenny's case, yeah. And there are, fathers are so important, and we'll get into that here in a little bit when we wrap this up. But yeah, that's Jenny's life. You said that really well, man. It does come back to how her dad, quote unquote, raised her in that abuse and that kind of stuff. The development that young kids go through in those environments, it does have severe lasting effects on their lives. I know some people, especially in our current culture, would try and argue that But most of them, sorry, I would have to say, where was your dad? Or where is your dad? And chances are you're probably going to respond, I don't have one. So fathers are important. They're really, really important. Obviously, you and I are biased on that, being fathers ourselves. But
But it's a constant reminder to not fall into that trap and not screw up.
Be present. And it's shocking how easy it is to make certain decisions to avoid any of that. Like,
the bar is not terribly high.
It's really not.
Have to be perfect. You just have to give yourself grace and keep showing up, basically.
Yeah, you need to be present. You really do. That's one of the big, like, care. And guess what, guys? It's pretty easy to care about something you love. So that being said, my number one does not care. And he tries to put on this facade that he cares. And he's number one just because all around there is not a good thing about this character. It also doesn't help that he's played by an actor who, it turns out, does not have a whole lot of good qualities about him.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about now.
This character might be one of the grossest, just uncomfortable guys to watch, but what makes him so much worse is how the movie tries to kind of play him off as the hero in a way of the story, and he's really not. Everyone in this movie is just the worst, but he takes my number one just because of how blatantly disgusting and selfish. Like, he takes all the qualities both of our lists have, and he just encompasses all of it. The only difference is he never actually kills anybody. But Lester Burnham from American Beauty is my number one. And he wasn't going to be number one. I knew he was going to be on the list, but he became my number one when I was rewatching American Beauty. Now, keep in mind, I have not watched this movie for a while. I, full disclosure, could not finish watching this movie. Turned it off. I was like, I know how it ends. Don't want to rewatch this movie. This movie is, and yes, I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox, I guess, or a little pedestal here. It's our show. I'm allowed to. This movie's gross. I can't believe I was ever a fan of this movie. Have you rewatched it, like, recently?
Not since all of the Kevin Spacey stuff came out.
Okay.
And I didn't care for it before that.
Okay. I was rewatching it. I got about, I don't even know how long I got into it. I got to, what scene was it where I was just like, yeah, I'm done. It wasn't even like I think it was him asking, or like calling his daughter's friend. That's what it was. When she's like in the shower and he calls her friend because he's like, got the hots for a high school girl. Gross, dude. Yeah, had to step away from it. It was so bad. But I was like, why was I ever someone that was like, this is a great movie. It's so poignant and it's so like, what an artistic way. No, it's a pretentious pile of crap that glorifies the worst aspects of humans. And it kind of tries to defend these actions by making you feel bad about it. And it's like
he's supposed to have some sort of a past at a midlife crisis or whatever.
Like they're trying to dumb it down to that. Nope. It's disgusting. Couldn't finish it. I was so mad that I was ever a fan of that movie. What a horrible pile of crap that movie is. And because it's the only movie on this list we're rewatching it, I was like, I can't even finish watching this character. You're number one because you are so vile. I can't even, like, don't want you around. Funny thing about in that aspect, I've had that happen with a handful of movies recently where it's like, you're gone. Which is wild to get rid of stuff like that. But yeah, so Lester Burnham, the worst. That's who's worse than Al Pacino's fictionalized version of Satan.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Gross. Yeah, there you go.
A big heaping pile of garbage dads for you.
What?
Dishonorable dads?
Did you almost have on there?
Well, one that I almost had as a joke Partly, not really as a joke, because it is easily the worst film father ever by a mile, I think, even more than the ones we talked about. Even more than the one you just described, even though the same reasons you described him being the worst would apply to this guy.
Oh.
Milos from a Serbian film is the
Why
worst.
did you bring that up?
For that noise, I just wanted to hear that noise. Worst movie dad ever. Realistically, it's that one, but also I could never actually have it on a list, so not going to.
That is the worst. Yep.
Nobody should watch that movie. It's just no redeeming value. Lighter note, I almost had Walter Hobbs from Elf because he is on the naughty list.
He's such a jerk in that whole movie.
Anybody on the naughty list, I think, qualifies as a bad dad.
That's fair.
And even though he didn't know he had a son for a long time, he also didn't really want to know that he had a son.
He's also pretty absent with the son that he...
That's also true.
But he has a pretty cool redemption at the end.
Yeah, he didn't fit your qualifier of
right.
no dreaming value. He does redeem himself at the end. And then Randy, the Ram Robinson from The Wrestler.
Okay.
He is a dad that just kind of puts himself ahead of his daughter and reaps the opposite of rewards because of it.
Consequences. We'll quote John Wick here. Consequences.
Consequences. And then a movie I was just reminded of that I had forgot about, Clifford McBride in Ad Astra, which is a kick-ass movie.
Dude, that is a cool movie. A very patient movie. I think that's why so many people hated it, but it's a pretty cool flick.
It's so cool in so many ways, and just the fact that there is a movie where they drive buggies on the moon shooting guns at each other, but it's not like a movie about that, but also they do it in the movie, which is so cool. But yeah, him as a dad doesn't really care about his son, even though his son just came across the entire outer space to find him, and also doesn't care about any of humanity that he's supposed to be there saving. I'm kind of a dick.
Bad move, dude. Bad move.
Yeah. And then all the dads in the Wes Anderson movies, Royal Tenenbaum, Steve Zissou, pretty much every one of his movies has a dad who's not very good in it.
I feel like Wes Anderson is trying to work through some severe things.
I think he has for decades
a long
at this
time
point.
Now. Yeah.
But they are pretty fun, bad characters.
Yeah.
And so I think that's enjoyable. That's a lot. Maybe I'll stop there. But those are a lot of my favorites.
Well, obviously, I already mentioned, like, Daniel Plainview is a mention for me. Also coming in from American Beauty is Colonel Fitz, the dad of the creepy stalker boy next door neighbor, because he's also abusive and gross and just doesn't need to exist. And then just to throw in some levity, because I think we need it just a little bit. Yes, Royal Tenenbaum is, you got to mention him because he does try to exploit people and he does lie to his whole family just so that he has a room to stay in for a little bit. He doesn't actually want to get back with his ex-wife. He just doesn't want her to be with anyone else, and then also just to have free room and board. He's pretty terrible. And then Thanos from the MCU, man. Like, he does kind of dismember, torture, and train one of his daughters, but then he also murders his other daughter for his own personal gain. So
that's pretty bad.
That's not a good dad move. I'd say
support that.
Yeah. Your list wasn't as daunting, but I am shocked that you did not have the dad that I expected you to have on your list. Oh, no,
did I forget someone?
So he's going to have to be a mention for, I'm going to say both of us, because the moment I remind you of him, you're going to probably be like, oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
But I can't remember his actual name, so hold on.
Okay. Gotta sell the joke entirely.
I know. I have failed a few times on this aspect. Fritz von Erich from the Iron Claw. You and I went on such a rant of how horrible the mom and dad are from that movie, but the dad is horrendous.
He's one half of the villain of the year for the first ever Movie Bonus Award.
Yes. So the fact that I didn't put him on there because I fully expected you to have him on there.
Yeah.
I'm shocked you didn't. Like, genuinely surprised you didn't.
Well, shoot, I let you down.
It's okay, though. It's okay.
I'm glad you brought him up.
We can bring him up now. Yeah, he's got to be on there. because he's just, man, he makes that movie hard to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's enough bad dads. What a list, folks.
Yeah. What a list indeed.
Yeah, I would just say, like, obviously we did this as kind of an irony, like kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of deal.
Yeah.
Obviously, you and I take fatherhood fairly serious. And of all the jokes that we made during this, legit dads, you need to be present in your kids' lives. You need to be intentional. You need to be a part of it. You need to be there to teach, to give wisdom, to help them grow. Our kids, whether they're daughters or sons, like, care, be present. It's a serious thing, and it's such an honor and a blessing to be a dad. So it's important. I think one thing we kind of only touched on a little bit with like the characters from these movies is there are lasting repercussions or consequences to failing at the very basic things of fatherhood. Yeah, these are movies, but it's real life. So please care. Be there for your kids.
Yeah, and it's overall not that hard. All of the hard stuff is just the complicated logistics of, you know, dealing with their big emotions or whatever, or different situations. But the easy part is showing up and loving them and wanting the best for them and trying to teach little things to help them avoid mistakes in their lives in the future.
And it's just like, it's an honor to be a dad. It's the greatest honor I've ever had. I know you feel the same. Being a dad is a very special, very awesome thing. Don't take it lightly, because it's a big responsibility. It's a great responsibility.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's definitely, I feel like in society, it feels like we're at a place where there's a inclination to avoid responsibility. And I think that as someone who had said at one point, I'm never going to have kids and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and living my life, I'm so glad that I did, because I feel like that responsibility is so important for you to become an adult that you're not even, I didn't feel that I was fully an adult until I had kids. And then you start to actually grow up and think about things outside of yourself and do things that matter long term. It's not just you're not just like living day to day or doing whatever. It's like you're thinking beyond your lifetime even now, and what will they do or need when they are 60 and I am dirt, you know?
Right.
and so I think I would definitely encourage anybody who's like, oh, I'm too concerned about screwing up too much, so I'm not even going to bother being a dad. I would say it's so worth it, and so you can do it. All you have to do is show up and not be a mass murderer, number one.
Right.
Don't do that. And don't be creepy, number two.
Right. Like, they're pretty easy things to avoid doing. Yeah, I love being a dad. There are many moments, you know, my daughter is, you know, she's actually getting up there now where in just a few years she'll be officially off on her own independent life, which is kind of a weird thought to have. She did ask me the other day, like, how are you feeling, Dad? Because I'm getting bigger. She's about to start learning how to drive. So milestones are officially, like, happening.
Yeah.
And I did find myself just telling her, like, I'm actually pretty good with it. It's wild. The math doesn't seem to work in my mind, but that's parent math, because we look at our kids and we go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This doesn't add up. How are you this big already? It feels like you were still, you know, wrapped up in a blanket in my arms. Like yesterday. But one of the greatest blessings of being a dad is watching our kids grow into like these full-fledged people, like themselves. It's really cool to see just all the things they learn. Even the hard times, man. Even the hard moments are like, they suck in the moment and they're very difficult, but looking back on some of them, it's such a cool thing. So we did this ironic episode, but dads, we're here to celebrate you, because what a incredible task that we have been trusted with. So
and it seems like, it sounds kind of like beating a dead horse, because just being there is the most important thing. But as I've been thinking about, and we've been doing this charity thing, not having a dad statistically is one of the biggest predictors for problems and failure in your life. And so just being present, the kids without dads in their lives are way more likely to go to prison, way more likely to get involved with drugs, way more likely to commit suicide, way more likely to do all these things. That it's just time after time it proves it's so important to just be there, and you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be there and try your best.
Yeah. Fathers add that stability, they add that structure, and man, do we need structure in our lives these days. So,
yeah. So happy Father's Day.
Happy
Thank you to all the good dads who are out there putting in work. We love you and respect you. I forgot to mention at the top, this episode comes out on Father's Day 2 days after our 5-year anniversary.
Which is wild.
So we founded Movie Boners with our first episode, the Top 10 Action Adventure, June 13th, 2020. And I can't believe we've been still going
5
at
years.
this point.
5 years. It's wild.
If you want to go back and check out that old episode, you can only find the first 8 on movieboners.com for free. You can go check it out and see where we started. That's really fun. But it's been a fun 5 years. We've grown quite a bit. I think we're approaching 9,000 plays on most of the streaming platforms. And then YouTube, which we didn't start until later, long form episodes there have almost 4,000 views on YouTube at this point.
All right.
So really appreciate everybody who's followed, subscribed, left reviews. If you've ever got any merch, or if you're about to get merch, just support the charity. That sounds really cool. Appreciate you. And if you've signed up for the fan club, part of the Discord, we love you very much.
Yeah, it's been a really cool ride, so appreciate you. 5 years. That's so wild, man.
I wonder where we'll be in 5 years from now.
Yeah. Who knows, man? Life is so...
It is. It could be anywhere for sure.
Well, if you have a worst movie dad in mind that neither of us mentioned, let us know who we neglected. We probably won't feel bad for neglecting them because it's okay. But let us know who you think are the worst dads, or if you would change the ranking on how we did ours.
What are we doing next on the schedule?
I don't know. Our schedule's gotten jumbled a few times now.
Yes. Let me unjumble it. Yes, next episode is the film Triangle with our friend Christian Flore, who was actually our first ever interview that we ever did almost 5 years ago. And he's stayed a friend on Instagram, and we're going to talk about the inherent conflict and support between art and technology and business in movies. And each take one of those to kind of do a little debate. It's going to be really fun.
It should be interesting. It's... definitely a trial episode, but I think the conversation is going to be fun.
Yeah, different concept than we've ever done before, but it should be very fun. All right.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. We'll see you next time.
Bye.